Well, folks, I was going to host a show about Sunday night's presidential debate, but then on Monday, well, the entire Republican Party melted down, so let's talk about that instead. I'm Steve Green with Scott Ott and Bill Whittle, and this is the right angle on the biggest October surprise ever, the GOP Civil War, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. All right, gents, it all started with a conference call on Monday morning when Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan said he wouldn't be supporting or campaigning with Donald Trump anymore and would spend the next 4 weeks working to protect the Republican House majority, which seems reasonable to me anyway, given Trump's near collapse over the weekend in must-win states like Ohio and Florida. Trump and his supporters hit back right away. Trump tweeted, quote, Paul Ryan should spend more time on balancing the budget, jobs, and illegal immigration and not waste his time on fighting the Republican nominee. Trump endorser Chris Christie, on the other hand, he said that he wouldn't defend Trump's 2005 comments about women either, while Ted Cruz said he still supports him. Mike Huckabee went to Megyn Kelly and accused worried Republicans of being bedwetters. On Tuesday morning, Trump tweeted that the shackles have been taken off of me. Wow, I didn't realize they were on. Regarding other Republicans, not Democrats, Republicans, but the establishment GOP. I mean, the actual national party led by Reince Priebus, they announced Monday night that Trump still had their full support, but NBC News reports that Trump backers are vowing revenge on the GOP. So make no mistake, guys, this is a civil war. Meanwhile, of course, the media has a fine excuse not to talk about little things like the Podesta emails, Guccifer, WikiLeaks, and all the rest. So Hillary Clinton is now up by double digits in at least 2 major polls released this week and up by 9 in the Wall Street Journal poll released Tuesday morning. Scott, are you saving your I told you so's for after the election, or is now the right time? Are you going to take the high road? Where do you go from here?
Well, when they go low, we go high, as my friend Michelle Obama said. No, there's no joy in Mudville for me in this kind of thing. It's just sad and pathetic. I mean, Donald Trump, and here's the problem, we've all heard the tape or read transcripts of it from 2005 with Billy Bush and the Access Hollywood bus and Donald Trump's comments on that. And this is the unforgivable sin for a principled party like the Republican Party, for a constitutional party like the Republican Party. The unforgivable sin is to do something that would cause you to lose an election, because that's all they care about. And I've said that from the beginning. And the sin here for Republicans isn't that Donald Trump said something nasty about women or suggested that he was a sexual assaulter, even though later he denied that he'd ever sexually assaulted anybody. But that's not the problem that the establishment Republicans have. The problem they have is that he may have blown the election. And so everybody is backing away from him, except for those who are already in so deep, like Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee, Rudy Giuliani, people like that who can't back out, and Ted Cruz, who frankly is looking like a more pathetic figure as the days go by. It's really kind of sad to see. I don't think necessarily that it's a broad civil war. What we're talking about is the Republican elites. And that's not just the elected people. It's those people who are in the corridors of power, the pundits, the political hacks, the consultants that get paid to do this kind of stuff, and the major donors. They're all in a tizzy because they hitched their wagon to this guy because they thought, if nothing else, he can win. He's a winner who wins. And now he's starting to look like, to them, a loser who loses. And that's why, Paul Ryan is doing the only rational thing that the Speaker of the House can do, which is to say, my main obligation is to hang on to our majority here and to increase it if possible. I don't have time to be out on the campaign trail trying to field questions about why Donald Trump says and does what he does. I got to get guys elected to the House.
Well, Scott, I have to take exception to your idea that this is just taking place among the GOP elites. Just this morning, I saw dual things from Republican women, conservative women, who have nothing to do with the National Party. One was at PJ Media, the other was on Twitter. One went on an epic rant about the men who are not defending women against Donald Trump, and the other wrote this wonderful column defending men for sticking with Trump when that's still the best choice for women going forward into November. So I think this is really bubbling up to the elites. What do you say?
And I probably didn't say that as as elegantly or eloquently as I should have. I don't mean to suggest that there isn't broad-based concern over this kind of stuff, but I mean the people whose fat is in the frying pan right now are those people who are standing for election or have dumped a lot of money into elections or whose careers depend on the election. I think there are a lot of the rest of us who are looking at this stuff and going, "Oh my goodness, how could it get any worse? How could this and how is it possible that so many, for example, prominent evangelical Christians, or at least those who are in the broadcast business, so to speak, are out there, still beating the drum. I mean, Tony Perkins, who's, I forget what his organization is called, but what a pathetic figure he has become, where he's out there saying, well, it was never values that was the common ground between me and Donald Trump. I mean, these are the kind of people who have summits called Value Voters Summits, where they're encouraging everybody to vote their values. And now after endorsing Trump, now he's going back and saying, well, it was never values that had me voting for him. And the same kind of thing with Ben Carson and lots of women coming out and justifiably saying, how do you explain this? First of all, many women have experienced themselves these kind of ogres manhandling them or talking about it and been in the presence of people like that. How do you turn around and explain that to your daughter and say, oh yeah, this is the guy that I'm voting for president of the United States, even if you agree with him on the border and the budget and taxes or anything else that you might agree with him on? How do you justify that? So, yeah, I don't mean to imply that there's not a broader concern about it, but as far as the consequences of the battle, the war, so to speak, I think that's going to shake out in the halls of power of the Republican Party, and I think it's going to redound to the detriment of many others.
Okay, Bill, right now it looks like Trump isn't just going to lose. He seems determined to take as much of the GOP down with him as he possibly can. So, forget the stupid tape from 2005. Forget your policy differences with the man. Forget any questions you might have about Trump's character. But just on the basis of what his nomination is doing to the GOP, do you think you can still vote for him in November?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to vote for him in November. Absolutely, I am, yes. We've said many times on this show, the three of us are friends, and one of the things I like about the show, one of the things I like about you guys, and one of the things I like about our side is that we can disagree on things, that there is no party line for which you will be chucked out if you disagree on abortion or whatever. There is a very sound argument that Scott is making, and other people like Scott and people I respect enormously like Andrew Klavan and so on. They're taking the same position Scott is, and I understand it, I respect it, I completely do. But I still come down to the fact that Donald Trump did not have 4 people dying under his watch and then joke about it afterwards. Donald Trump didn't lie to the American people again and again and again and again and again about the movies being the cause of the Benghazi catastrophe, about I didn't have any. She's going into office as a felon. And there's no question about it. There's absolutely no discussion about it. It's not a question of shade. The statutes are the statutes. I can read the statute. She is a multiple felon. So what we're seeing here for me is how much deeper down these miserable holes do we have to go to find out where the bottom of the lesser of two evils is, I mean, it's when you say, well, how can you vote for this guy? My only response is to say he said these things, and while he was saying these things, while this story broke, there's actual video evidence of Bill Clinton putting his hand between this woman's knees and having her swatted away. I mean, what Trump is doing, Trump is being crucified for behaving like a Democrat. I mean, John F. Kennedy did this. Ted Kennedy.
That may be the line of the
Ted
show.
Kennedy with his what were they called, waitress sandwiches? Where he would.
Yeah.
These people are monsters in a lot of ways, but I'm just watching this thing just go into a ball of fire, and I don't know what to do about it, Scotty. I cannot pull not only can I not pull the lever for that woman, I will do everything in my power to stop her. And I've never seen a person who I hated this way. And justifiably so, by the way.
Yeah.
The three of us have mentioned that in 2008, we all thought we had a pretty good idea of what Obama was going to be. Turns out he was, and in many ways worse than what we thought he was going to be. But at the night of his election, and shortly thereafter, all three of us said, we wish him luck. I hope I'm wrong about him. I hope I'm wrong about him. I hope he becomes a great president, and I hope he does what he claims he can do for this country. He didn't, but nobody feels that way about Hillary. And what do you say? I mean, what do you say? If this isn't rivers of blood and rain of frog from the skies, I don't know what is. I'm very serious about this. This election catastrophe looks like punishment to me. And I don't know how else to describe it. And by the way, we're not done yet. We've still got another 3 weeks of stuff, and there's all kinds of things that can drop.
Yeah. Bill, I'm still planning on voting for him in November, too. But I have a worry as we go forward into 2020. We had this broad and deep GOP field in 2016, but none of these guys or gals were able to defeat Trump. Do you think the taint of 2016 is going to pretty much disqualify any of this year's contenders from future presidential runs?
Well, I'll just answer that with a sports analogy, and I'll just say a deep bench doesn't mean anything if none of those guys can play basketball, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many guys you got on your bench. If none of them can play basketball, then that's not an asset. That's a liability. It's taking up space for people who could play basketball. What we found, I think, in the 2016 election was that there was, in fact, a perfect Republican candidate. And it consisted of about 9 people split up.
The Franken candidate. I did that trifecta segment.
No, absolutely. If you took some of Donald Trump's scrappiness and willing to fight back, and you took Ben Carson's intelligence, and you took Ted Cruz's fundamental principles as far as conservatism goes, you throw in Scott Walker's practicality and his pragmatism in terms of getting things.
That face.
Carly Fiorina's financial all of this. If you took it all together, you'd have a tremendous candidate. But Donald Trump won because Donald Trump speaks the language of the American people. He is a pop culture figure. And the person that's going to save this party is going to be the person who can take that kind of savvy and that kind of ability to use the media and the language to his purposes, and then have his purposes be the protection and the restoration of constitutional rights and no other purposes beyond that.
Well, if there's any party to save after November, folks, I don't know what to tell you. Looking at the election map, Pennsylvania is gone, Florida is probably gone, North Carolina might be gone, and Ohio is starting to slip away, according to the latest at Real Clear Politics. The Senate is back up for grabs, and Democrats are even eyeing the House for the first time in months. Trump supporters, they figured that without Trump, they were going to lose on amnesty. But now we're all going to lose on amnesty, and we're going to lose on the Supreme Court, on Obamacare repeal, on rule of law, and well, damn near everything else. And this isn't the fault of a few grumpy, never Trump people. It isn't the fault of the GOP establishment, which openly embraced Trump before the convention and even changed its own rules to make sure he'd get the nomination without a floor fight. Really, it's not even Donald Trump's fault. He is what he is, like the fable about the frog and the scorpion. This is the fault of a plurality of Republican primary voters who thought it was more important to bleed out a wounded party than to nurse it back to health with a principled conservative nominee. That's a difficult fact, but it's true. Even more difficult is the reconciliation we're going to have to go through next year if we're going to save this country from the progressives. That's a topic for another day. So for your Right Angle team and the members of BillWhittle.com, thanks for watching.